Assalamu alaikum students, and welcome to your English literature session for June 24th. We're going to continue with Act 4 Scene 3 lines 124 onwards. Before moving on, let's just do a quick review of what you studied yesterday in the live session. What is the setting of Act 4 Scene 3? It is a tent on the battlefield. Why is Cassius angry at Brutus at the beginning of the scene? Listen to read the question carefully, students. We're specifically asking you what the cause for Cassius's anger was at the beginning of the scene. It was Brutus's contradiction of Cassius's claim that Lucius Vella was innocent. Who claims to be the better and more experienced soldier? Cassius. What exactly does Brutus seem to regret? It is killing Julius Caesar. And what did Cassius deny Brutus? What did Brutus ask for that he was denied by Cassius? It was money. All right, let's read the objectives for today's lesson. We are going to analyze the reasons for Brutus's rash temper as compared to his usual stoic and logical self. Reflect on the significance of the manner of Portia's suicide, not just why she died, but how she died, and the symbolism behind it. And you're going to explore the reasons and dramatic value of the appearance of Julius Caesar's ghost. All right, so now you know that there was a very heated debate going on between Brutus and Cassius throughout the first 124 lines of this scene. So how did that argument actually come to an end? It was Cassius's offer to kill himself. Now it's up to the reader, it's up to the audience to decide whether this act of Cassius's to bare his chest and to take out his dagger and try to kill himself, is it actually because he feels bad for making Brutus angry, or is it another one of his tactics to get Brutus on his side? So it's up to you as readers to decide what the actual reason is. So at the end, the argument is resolved and they agree to move forward and prepare their tactics for the impending battle. The entry of a poet. Now we saw another poet, you know of another poet who was there in the previous act. His name was Cinna the poet. And Shakespeare's rationale, again, for introducing a poet there in the previous act was to break the tension and to introduce a new aspect to the play. Here again, why is it specifically a poet who is introduced? What does the poet do? He comes in and he barges into the tent where Brutus and Cassius are fighting, and he tells them to stop fighting. Love and be friends as two such men should be. That's what he tells them. And what is Cassius and Brutus's response? This is what is important, and this is actually why the poet was introduced in this scene. Both of them, they laugh at him, they mock him, and they send him away. So this actually becomes a turning point for this entire scene, entire act. This becomes the point where they completely forget about their argument and they move on to the next discussion. What is the next discussion? It is the revelation of Portia's death. Brutus says, "Oh Cassius, I am sick of many griefs." Now, the first 124 lines, Brutus is completely acting out of character. He is usually very logical, very sensible, very reasonable, very straightforward. But throughout this particular scene, he is completely in anger. He is losing his temper at Cassius. So that is why here particularly he tells Cassius that I'm sick of many griefs. And what is that particular grief? It is that Portia has died. And how did she die? If you look at the last line on your left, and her attendants absent, she swallowed fire. Portia's death was caused by her swallowing fire. It was a suicide. Now let's look at the analysis on the right. Portia, Brutus's loving wife, was driven to grief by his flight from Rome and by Antony and Octavius's growing strength. So she has killed herself by swallowing coals. Portia just could not bear the fact that her husband was driven away from Rome and that another person was going to rule Rome, and it's everyone around her hated her husband and hated the situation that had been created. There was complete anarchy and chaos. Portia just could not bear that any longer, and that's why she killed herself. Another important point here is Brutus's response. Brutus could not just come out and tell everyone, I am very sad and I cannot deal with these things because my wife has died. And because he didn't tell anyone that, the way he handled and processed his grief was to get angry at Cassius. Look at the text in blue. Loss and betrayal are essential elements of grief. So Brutus here, he actually feels betrayed by Portia, and he has this very big hole in his heart. There's a great loss that he has faced. But how is he dealing with these things? He cannot say it to the dead. He cannot wake up Portia and tell her that you have caused me a lot of grief. So how is he handling that? He is channeling that. He is transferring those feelings to Cassius. So it seems to be that it is Cassius who has betrayed him. It is Cassius who leaves him. So that is the transferring of grief from Portia to Cassius that Brutus is doing here. The symbolism behind Portia's death. Now, students, this particular slide is of a lot of importance. So you make sure that you understand this very carefully. The symbolism behind Portia's death is that she, being a blameless character, she died in one of the most painful ways imaginable. She swallowed coal. So why? Why did Shakespeare cause such a painful death to such an unimportant character? A character, and it's not just that she was unimportant, she actually hadn't done anything wrong. So why did she take it upon herself to commit suicide in such a dangerous manner? Portia is devoted to principle. Just like her husband, she is devoted to principle. So now she commits suicide rather than live under the new regime. She just could not bear the thought of living under Antony and Octavius Caesar's rule, so she killed herself. Look at the third line carefully. By her suicide, she takes on the sins of the men and attempts to expiate them. It is a sort of symbolism. This is how Shakespeare plays with everything that happens in the text. She takes on the sins of men. See, the third and the fourth point, they're sort of interrelated. Let's look at both of them together. In the manner of her suicide, she, Portia, in metaphorical terms, internalizes the painful, rash, hot decisions that have brought the state to civil unrest. It is like Portia's death, the manner of her death is metaphorically, it is symbolizing the entire state of Rome at that point. We know that Caesar's killing and the way Antony handled it, the entire state of Rome, all of the people, they are in an uproar. There is chaos everywhere. There's complete anarchy. So hot decisions means decisions taken in when decisions are not thought through, decisions taken quickly. So hot decisions, it actually equates the hot coals that Portia ate to kill herself. That is the symbolism here. And and Shakespeare tries to portray through this particular suicide the fact that maybe the people will be forgiven because Portia killed herself in such a gruesome manner. Maybe the people will be forgiven. It is a hot decision. It can be said that it's a hot decision on Portia's side. It is a hot decision on Antony and Brutus's side. Everyone took such decisions that led to chaos in Rome. And that is what Portia is doing. She's taking on the sins of men. Her suicide is symbolizing the state of Rome at that point. What does this suicide actually mean for Brutus and Cassius's friendship? We see that Cassius simply cannot understand why Brutus is acting so out of character. Why is Brutus so angry? He's never been so angry. So this revelation, when Brutus reveals that Portia has died, it actually gives Cassius a sense of understanding of why Brutus is acting that way, and it causes a sort of a shift in their friendship. It gives Cassius an entirely new sense of understanding of why Brutus is acting so irrationally, and he understands and he gives Brutus that space to grieve.